Well, hello everyone, I'm Postmaster Radio and it's time to bring on the funny. You're listening to Ujokes Weekly, the one and only podcast highlighting Jonathan Mangum's fantastically funny virtual comedy show Ujokes, where comedians compete for the most laughs, plus you guys and gals, part of the audience, you also have a chance to dominate. It's literally comedy gold at your fingertips. Now, normally this lovely little Ujokes podcast I constructed myself shoves 30 minutes worth of comedy in 15 minutes or less, except this time it's 1 hour's worth of comedy in less than 15 minutes because today I'm looking back on the best jokes from last week's Ujokes show with Rebecca T. Kaplin and Vishnu Vaka, and also this week's show with Jason Cheny and Kevin McCaffrey. Now, before we get started, quick little reminder that if you missed the most recent episode of Ujokes Weekly, you know, where I talked about that show with Mateen Stewart, returning player, and newcomer Ed Larson, catch up now via the link in the description. You can also watch that full-length Ujokes show on the Ujokes YouTube channel. And by the way, for listeners of the Ujokes podcast, if you want more Ujokes, of course, subscribe to the Ujokes YouTube channel, and you can also go to the official Ujokes website created by Ujokes fanatic Craig in the UK. For listeners of the podcast, any of you that are listening to this for the first time, please leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Podchaser if it's not too much trouble. Those of you that have tuned in before, here's what's going to happen. You obviously know how we do it. Top 5 countdown, the Ujokes Awards. Except this time we're kind of slightly revising it just a wee little bit without really changing anything. Does that not make sense? I didn't think it would, but here's the important thing. This week's Top 5 Countdown, 1 joke from each of the pros, 1 from Rebecca, 1 from Kevin, etc., and then 1 joke from the audience, team audience. Out of all the ones that I liked from this week's and last week's show, that one was put on the countdown and it went up against the pros. And by the way, before I forget, all jokes from the audience this week and last week were considered, except for mine from this week that got picked by Jonathan's producer, Josh. Remember this week's Name the Movie game with the lady and the broomstick, and I called it Broom with a View? Well, the thing is, because I am the host of the Ujokes podcast, I don't think it would be all that fair for me to consider my own jokes, because then otherwise this would turn into the Postmaster Radio Variety Hour, and nobody wants that. But anyway, you get the gist. That's how it's going to go for the countdown. And for the Ujokes Awards, we're still going to do that, no problem, except each award, Comedian of the Week and Game of the Week, we're going to give out 2 of these awards. 1 for this week's show, 1 for last week's, so there you go. Oh, and of course, honorable mentions, because when you have 2 shows to deal with, you're bound to get some jokes that should have made the countdown, even though they did not. Anyway, let's get it going. At spot number 5 on this week's Ujokes Combo Countdown, we go to last week's show for a little game called What's This a Commercial For? Pretty self-explanatory. Our players had to come up with a possible product being advertised based on the picture of 2 men with interesting looking hats on them. Now that is, of course, for those of you not listening on YouTube that can't see the pic, of course this is one of those pics in which it would maybe be better if you just went to YouTube and saw it for yourself. But then again, the alternative solution, best go with the joke that Vishnu Vaka had.
And this is for Oculus, prehistoric Oculus. They hear what you see, and they see what you hear.
Wow. This is all some Orwellian answers, but I do like them all. Good job, Vishnu.
And that's all I have to say for that pick, except for one more thing. Congrats to Vishnu for winning that game of What's This a Commercial For? Well done, Vishnu. And now we go on to spot numero 4 on the countdown, still on last week's show, but now the game that came before the commercial one, Name the Movie. Name the movie for the picture of a pantsless man who appears to be going on the subway, or at least waiting for one. And in the case of Rebecca T. Kaplin, it is sometimes best if you have not 1, not 2, but 3 jokes. Gotta give her some props for these.
Waiting for bidet, Requiem for a Pee, and Chattanooga doo-doo.
Those are all quality comedy answers that are good. It'll be hard to beat those.
And difficult to beat those, it certainly was. I know me personally, I would have gone for probably the Requiem for a Pee joke, but nevertheless, for whichever joke it was, maybe even all of them, Rebecca won the Name the Movie game. So, well played, Rebecca. Well played indeed. And now it's time we go on to this week's Ujokes show. Spot numero 3 on the countdown goes to a little game called Dumbest Answer for the question, why do trees have bark? Why do trees have bark? Is it related to dogs? I'm not entirely sure. Maybe it could be, maybe it couldn't be. The important thing is make this answer as dumb as you can. Jason Cheny sure did, and maybe he had Tarzan on his mind when he thought of this one, but a winning joke nonetheless.
Why do the trees have bark? To keep Tarzan from hitting the tree core.
I mean, you can't argue with it. You can't argue with that.
It's
You
factual.
said the dumbest answer.
It is
Kevin's
so
is actually too smart.
Disqualified.
Yeah, it's qualified, dude.
Was it too smart of a dumb answer? I have no idea, but who cares? Because Jason won that game of dumbest answer. But overall, if you saw this week's Ujokes show, you know that in terms of the pros playing, not including the audience jokes, Kevin McCaffrey kind of dominated this week. We'll talk more about that on Ujokes Awards. But right now, spot number 2 on the countdown, his funny as hell performance on Caption This for the picture of a baby who appears to be in the care of a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle, maybe more like Teenage Mutant Ninja Caretaker, I don't know. But the important thing is, Kevin, he had actually 2 jokes for this one. I'm personally leaning towards his alt joke, but both of them funny as hell.
Maury Povich, I don't think we're going to need the test for this one. Turtle, you are not the father.
Yeah.
You do that, or Teenage Father Ninja Turtles, heroes with half custody. That's the alt. That's the alt. That's the alt.
They alt work.
Yes, indeed, Jonathan, they do alt work. And I actually did think for a second or two that the joke selected by Jonathan's producer Josh for Team Audience of that game was going to win that game of Caption This. It did not. Kevin dominated with who knows what joke, the Maury Povich one or the heroes with half custody one. Again, like I said, I personally prefer the latter of those 2 jokes, but whatever. Congratulations, Kevin McCaffrey. And now we come to the top pick out of both of those Ujokes shows, spot numero 1 on the countdown for a game called Sounds Like Sumthin. Sounds Like Sumthin. And in this game, it's a sound effects clue. This was the sound effect. And you know what? No question about it. From the audience, YouTube chat, Melissa Garland came up with the perfect joke for this one. The sound you make in the middle of the night when you step on a Lego. I mean, that's kind of true in all seriousness. Like, if you do step on a Lego, especially in the dark, because you can't even see the pieces, that's just gotta be painful. So well done, Melissa Garland. You had the best joke. Time now to move on to the Ujokes Awards, which is basically like the Oscars, except an award show worth listening to. For Comedian of the Week, 2 winners. In last week's case, Rebecca T. Kaplin. Safe to say she kind of dominated last week. And for this week's show, without a doubt, Kevin McCaffrey with the win. And I want to share your thoughts now. In last week's case, a tie between Rebecca and Vishnu. Meanwhile, for this week's Twitter poll, a unanimous win for Kevin. And for Instagram, almost the case as well, but with 9 votes going to him and only 2 for Jason. And by the way, shout out to the voters on the Insta poll this week, Elite Concrete and Karen Frazier for Jason. And Kevin's voters, Business_Casual Line, Emmy Lancaster, Brandon Angelo, Love Mafrica, Ryan M. Kirk, Ken Schultz, John.wants.pizza, Know It Some Pod, so the account of the Know It Some podcast, and Joe McCaffrey. Cool, thanks for voting, guys. Now on to Game of the Week, and for this one, there's only one winner, because if I'm being honest, in this week's show, I liked all the games equally, so 5-way tie in that case. Last week's Game of the Week award, though, I'm going to give it to the commercial game, because I feel like Vishnu, Rebecca, and the joke from Team Audience, all 3 of the jokes dominated. So yeah, great game commercial. Now we go on to the Audience Award. This is for the best joke from Team Audience. Last week's winner, very clear to me, Melissa Garland with the Lego joke, It Sounds Like Sumthin. And for this week's Audience Award, Shiana for a joke she had in Jingalong, which I'll come back to in honorable mentions. And as for Mangum Moment, the award that shines the spotlight on Ujokes host Jonathan Mangum, last week's winner, a joke he had in the Name the Movie game, Murder on the Orient Pantsless. I like that one. And this week's manga moment, I'm going to give it to the start of this week's show when Kevin was talking about his not so wonderful live chat experience before this week's Ujokes show, where apparently the host or the runner of the live chat typed in Jimmy Kimmel instead of Kevin McCaffrey, which, by the way, now that I see it, it's almost eerie in a way how Kevin kind of looks like Jimmy Kimmel. Oh, well, anyway. And then that got Jonathan talking about when he and Wayne would do some live shows, and every now and then it would be like a weird intro with, from Let's Make a Deal and Whose Line Is It Anyway? And then Jonathan comes out and it's like, okay. And to be clear, as Jonathan said, that was the intro for like whenever he was touring, sometimes by himself, and not with Wayne, because apparently not everybody knows who's going to be on those shows. Anyway, I'm sure you get the idea, but point being, Jonathan's laugh after that, I couldn't ignore that moment, so yeah. Anyway, that's it for the Ujokes Awards. Now it's time for honorable mentions, extra jokes that did not make the countdown. These ones actually do come from you guys, the audience. Starting off with last week's show, a game of Bumble Brag, which is basically caption this except for someone's dating profile. And for the picture of the bride to be with a sword, so maybe a wedding samurai, shout out to Amy Khan for this one. I'm ready to take another stab at matrimony. Oh yeah, hard to beat that joke, and Amy Khan won that game of Bumble Brag. Well done, Amy. And then going on to this week's show, we go back to the caption this game with the Teenage Mutant Ninja caretaker, Angela Rosender on the YouTube chat, Huggies in a half shell. And lastly, Jingalong, Shiana _ free your soul. For the product of chunky yogurt, her jingle was, if you need to take a look at this chunky booty fun. Well done, Shiana. And like I said before, she's the winner of this week's Audience Award, so congrats on that once again. And you know what? That's it for this week's Ujokes podcast, except for a few final announcements. First, if you want more Ujokes fun, I mentioned the Ujokes website, but did you know if all goes to plan, the next show will be on Monday, October 25th, 6 p.m. Pacific Time, 9 Eastern. If you didn't, well, here's something you can do until then. You can go back to the Ujokes show, and whether or not you were able to watch it live, type in your own jokes in the comment section. Jonathan and his producer Josh will look back on all of the jokes and they will decide which one they like the best. That person who submitted said joke will get to compete in the final round on the next Ujokes show against the pros and team audience. And make sure you also subscribe to the Ujokes YouTube channel to check out the other shows on the channel, FMK Champions being one of them, hosted by college humorist Carolyn Page. New episodes of that typically on Wednesday nights, 7 Pacific Time, 10 Eastern. And the other show, High Joke Score, where jokes equal cash. New episode of that coming up on Friday. And you can also get Ujokes/FMK merch via the link in the description. Maybe a Ujokes mug, FMK shirt, your pick. Again, link to that in the description. And guys, gals, hilariously funny ladies and gents, that's it for today's episode of Ujokes Weekly. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed yourselves. Make sure you stay connected with me on Twitter and Instagram at Postmaster Radio. Plus, like, subscribe, comment, rate, and review on Spreaker, Spotify, the Apple and Google podcast platforms, Podchaser, iHeartRadio, the list goes on. The account links are all in the description. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, well, bye for now, my Ujokes fanatics. See ya!